liberals, remember us, the American people? Because why is it that illegals are treated as a protected class of people, but the people that the government is actually duty-bound to protect are disregarded and ignored by the left as a xenophobic annoyance, simply because we want our government to look after its own citizens? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because the Democrats are eager right now to import more dependent Democratic voters, because I think they might just be a little worried that the American people actually like what Donald Trump is doing right now. So they throw the will of the rightful American citizens out the window and say, oh, when will these right-wingers stop with this America First nonsense? It's so old-fashioned. It's so barbaric. Well, I'll tell you what's barbaric. What these migrant maniacs are doing at the border is barbaric. Trying to scale the walls of our cities like it's the siege of frickin' Antioch, that is what is barbaric. And in response, the left is giving these people constitutional rights, and in some cases, privileges that we as citizens of this country don't even have. For instance, the ability to break our country's laws and just be rewarded with food and shelter rather than be punished. That's not how it should work. If these people want to act like a bunch of unruly brutes in the Crusades in 1098, then we'll treat them as such and fortify a big giant fortress for them so that they can stop them, just like in the old times. Because it worked then and it will work now. It's worked in California, as we've told you, where border apprehensions dropped by 87% between 2006, when they built the barrier, and 2010. It's worked in Israel, where suicide attacks declined by well over 90%, and where the number of illegal African immigrants between 2011 and 2013 dropped from 17,000 to 43 people. It worked in Egypt, where they erected a massive steel barricade in Gaza. This one is made of bomb-proof, super-strength steel, which cannot be cut or melted. Maybe we should try that. This wall has forced Hamas to go to greater lengths to move their weapons, their explosives, and their goods. And that is from Harvard. You know I had to kill them to admit that. It's also worked in Spain, who has a 7-mile steel structure to block illegal immigration from Morocco. The number of illegals dropped attempting to enter illegally from 2,100 in 2014 to just 100 in 2015. In just 1 year. That happened in a single year. It's incredible. Countries like Hungary, Britain, Bulgaria, Norway, Turkey, and Myanmar have all built walls on their borders. That's what we need. We don't need the government via the courts extending constitutional rights to people who are not even included in our social contract. We need government to perform its duty to secure the nation and our borders. So to answer your question of when we're going to stop with this America First nonsense, the answer is never. We will never stop trying to protect our people. Immigrants are killing us, and we're supposed to be grateful for them and put them up on a pedestal as a protected class while they bring in their murderers, their tuberculosis, their AIDS, their disease, and inflict them on our people. And they say, you should be more appreciative for all these people and all they do for you, because after all, this country was built on immigrants. No, not ones like you guys. The left is hoping, just dreaming, that if only they could get rid of the bothersome racists, they could finally complete their insidious globalist agenda by selling our country and its people down the river to those who seek to come in and destroy it. All right, if I hear one more person say, it's immigrants like these who built this country. No, the immigrants who built this country are the ones who came in the right way. It is immigrants like Sabina Durden. Now, Sabina lost her son Dom to an illegal immigrant who came in the wrong way. This illegal immigrant with a record of drunk driving hit her son Dom, hit his motorcycle, and took his life. Sabina is here with me now. Sabina, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, John.
So, your son Dom, does it seem like people on the left are more interested in protecting the illegal immigrants, the kind of people who killed your son, rather than Americans like your son here in America?
Oh, it absolutely does. And it seems like it's getting worse. And I don't know if you see the steam coming out of my ears, because I'm really, really tired of it. I'm fed up with hearing about these poor people. They want a better life. This is my son. I brought him. I have his ashes with me. I also carry his ashes in a locket.
And that's all you have left?
That's all I have. I have no family left. He was my only child.
And they talk about family separation. And then for some reason, it doesn't matter that you have been
No.
permanently separated.
No,
from
not
your
at
son.
all. And matter of fact, mainstream media doesn't even approach us.
But because
CNN, MSNBC, nobody wants to talk.
What do they? Because you went on MSNBC once, right?
Yeah, I was so surprised.
What did they say to you? Because I thought they don't want you to exist.
They really don't. And they had me on with another lady. She was an illegal, and she was telling us that her daughter is scared of Trump. And I said, no, it's you doing this. It's
Right.
not Trump doing this. At that time, he wasn't president. But they don't talk to us, so their viewers don't get the full story, that this could be their child.
Right.
They could be in a morgue kissing their child for the last time on a cold slab. And it has to stop now. We have to wake up. We have to do something. And it's time that Americans come first.
And you are an American, but you came legally.
Yes, I did. It took me 6 years to become a citizen. And I went through every step. I didn't drag my son over a border or squeezed him through any bars and then claim that, I need asylum. No.
Right.
I came the right way. I paid a lot of money, took a lot of time to do that. And I took pride in that. I earned my right to be here. When you skip the border and you jump over a fence like the guy on that picture.
Right. You're cheating.
Yes. You're
cheating.
getting in front in the line. And I always tell people, if you're in front in a line, hungry, and somebody's skipping and getting in front of you,
Right.
you're going to get
You're
upset.
gonna
Well,
very
I'm
mad.
upset.
Yeah. And I
They're
don't blame
taking
you.
away from our people.
Now, the man who killed your son.
Yes.
You eventually got him deported.
Yes, it took us a year and a half.
And he got 9 months in prison. That's it. 9 months.
He got 9 months
prison.
and 5-year probation, and he wasn't even in prison. He was in jail, in a
jail.
local jail, and he served 35 days.
I just want to tell our viewers, most of the time, if you get charged for vehicular manslaughter, it's 3 to 15 years.
Yeah.
This guy, because he's an illegal, gets 9
Of
months.
course.
9 months.
Let's roll out the red carpet. Let's make sure that you get to bail out. He got to bail out with $10,000 cash while we were trying to figure out what to do with him.
I mean, it's so unfair to American citizens.
Yes.
And it's so unfair to families. And, you have angel moms who are, and it's not just moms, it's actually the entire families.
Yes.
And, it's a number of people who have been affected by illegal immigration, and they don't have loved ones because of the problem.
And now everything is geared towards family with Christmas.
Right.
It's tearing me up.
And
I have no family.
family
I
to
don't
get
like
through.
Christmas anymore. I don't like holidays
You don't have anyone
anymore.
to spend it with.
No.
And it's incredible because at a hard time like this for you and the other families who have been permanently separated from their kids, people for political reasons are calling you evil. And they're calling you, you get called all sorts of names.
Oh, I get called racist,
Yeah, and your son is half black or?
Yeah, he was half black.
And you're a racist because you don't want people coming into the country.
Yeah, and I always tell people, I don't care what color you are, I don't care what country, even German.
Right.
If you're an illegal German, I would
Get
tell
out.
you Auf Wiedersehen.
Right. Now, it's incredible because these are people who claim to care so much and they claim to be so compassionate, and yet they're out there calling you names and they're out there defaming your character because you support the president and because you support his policies.
Yeah.
And I think what people need to know is that you're not doing this for you because you've already lost it all.
I could just stay home and do
And
nothing.
nothing
but
would happen to you.
President Trump gave Dominic and myself a voice, and I carried that forward. And I figured, well, what's better to let people know about Dominic?
And
I don't want him to die in vain.
Right. And you are doing this for the other potential families
Yeah.
who could have the exact same thing happen to them. And they don't realize that that's...
No, and that's why I want to reach out to these politicians on the left and the right and in the middle, all the way to the top. I want them to close their eyes for a second and imagine one of their loved ones dead because of an illegal. And they need to step it up and make sure we're okay. And illegals shouldn't have any rights. They shouldn't even be considered.
And they're giving them, and we explained this in our monologue, they're given extra rights.
Yes.
They come here, you have that girl or that woman who hopped over the fence, had her baby, and now she gets welfare. Yep.
Ka-ching.
The whole family gets welfare.
Yeah, bring in the rest.
And it's incredible. I think that these policies, they need to be fixed. You said that you were ready to end it. Before Donald Trump.
Yes, I was.
You had nothing to live for.
I was so distraught because Dominic and I, we were 30 years of best friends, and I'm sorry.
No.
we shared a household for 10 years. His dad and I divorced, and we were just really close. And when that was ripped away from me, I had no hope. I didn't want to live anymore. And my poor fiance, he had no clue. And I had it planned to the T. And the day that Donald Trump announced his candidacy, I walked through the living room and I heard him. And I thought, oh, is he doing another TV show? And then I heard the words illegal immigration, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I broke down. And it was my sign from God. And at that point, I had no clue what was to come.
Right.
Being a guest speaker at the RNC or being at the White House in the Oval Office with him. But it gave me strength, and it gave me that umph I needed to continue.
To continue.
Yeah, and make some out of it.
And I think it's, I mean, you have it the worst, but I think he had that effect on so many Americans who saw these problems and said, you know, he's saying something different. He's saying what this country needs.
Yeah.
Do you think he realizes how important it is to get this border wall, which we explained, you know, has been extremely effective in stopping the people who commit these atrocities into the country? Do you think he realizes how important that is to people, and that if he does not get it done, it's going to be a big problem for him?
Yes. No, I believe he understands it. And when I met him, he looks me straight in the eyes. He calls me Dom's mom. I know he knows how important this is. And whether you call it a wall, a fence, whatever it is, get it done.
Right.
And if it doesn't get done, there will be repercussions. I would step back. Because
for everyone, I mean,
that's what kept me going.
Right.
The hope that this is finally going to stop, because I'm tired of hearing from other families. I'm tired of getting emails, calls on Twitter, people reaching out that went through it, but they don't want to talk about it. I'm tired of hugging another angel mom or dad. I'm just tired. It doesn't need to.
Well,
it doesn't need to be.
It's so important for our viewers to hear this directly from you, and I'm so happy that we were able to talk about this.
I'm so glad to be here.
I want to mention your group. It's Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Victims.
Illegal alien crime, yeah. What happened was it's 5 of us who lost loved ones, 2 brothers, and then 3 of us lost our sons to illegal alien crime. And there are groups out there that talk about it, but they don't have skin in the game.
Right.
Well, when I heard about this young lady, that young teacher that was killed on walking over the street, immediately it hits you right. We know the pain.
Right,
we know what they go through.
Right.
We know how they're
you
going to
can
be
connect on
lied
that.
to by the DA or somebody trying to hide the fact and all that. So we can connect on a different level. And so we created AVIAC.
AVIAC.us, Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crimes.
Exactly.
And then domhugs.org.
Yes. Dom Hugs. Dominic was a big guy. He called himself German chocolate because of his
We have a
heritage.
picture. Can we put that picture up again? That's you and Dom.
That's my German chocolate, yeah. And he gave the biggest and best hug, so I decided to do Dom Hugs. It's domhugs.org. It's not a foundation. I don't want money. I just share what I do.
I want to share your story so that more people are aware.
And people can get the bracelets, the green bracelets that are all over the world.
So domhugs.org, everyone.
Yeah.
Sabina, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you,
been a real
John.
pleasure.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, thanks guys for watching. We'll see you guys next
All right, let's bring in Hayden Ludwig. He from Washington, D.C. He's a spokesperson for Capital Research Center, influencewatch.org. It's a conservative organization watching this migrant situation. Now, I think the migrant thing is going to dissipate over the next few weeks before Christmas. Obviously, USA not letting them in, and people start to go home. Do you see it that way?
Well, considering that a lot of these migrants sitting in Tijuana are looking at perhaps 3 years of waiting in Tijuana. I grew up near Tijuana. It's not a place you want to wait. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty likely that before the end of the year, at least a substantial portion turn around and go home.
Okay. Now, those who remain are obviously burdening Mexico. That's a government that doesn't give you welfare. I don't know if people know this or not, but if you're in trouble in Mexico, you're on your own. Government's not going to fund you or, make your life any better. I give a lot of money to a charity that actually supports children living in a garbage dump in Tijuana. Kids live in the garbage dump. It's an American-run charity because the Mexican government does nothing. But there is big money being pumped into the Migrant Caravan. Have you looked into that?
We have. So the organizations that I identified last month, the one you've spoken about before is Pueblo Sin Fronteras. It's attached at the hip to a 501c3 nonprofit in Chicago called Centro Sin Fronteras. We should say that's Center Without Borders in Spanish. Centro has gotten at least $60,000 from a group called the National Immigration Forum, which itself is funded by George Soros's Open Society Foundations and a host of major left-wing foundations like Ford, MacArthur, Rockefeller, Carnegie, you name it.
Yeah, this organization got $4.4 million from Soros, National Immigration Forum, and right. That was from 2009 to 2015, I believe. We don't have the data past that, but there are millions of dollars flowing into the organizations on the ground because it costs millions of dollars to charter buses to take thousands of people from Mexico City to Tijuana, and that's what happened, did it not?
Yeah, and Bill, I know that the Mexican government did offer to use buses to take a lot of these migrants. I believe the destination was Mexico City, and as I understand it, they declined. But we've seen so much footage on the ground from left-wing, right-wing sources that show buses with men in jackets unloading water, unloading food, candy. I mean, you name it, all sorts of different things for these people. It's a professional organization here.
There's no doubt it's professional. There's no doubt it's methodical. But where is 60 Minutes on it? Where is the New York Times, the Washington Post? Doesn't seem like they really want to tell the folks who's pumping the money into this migrant movement.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, when I started reporting on this in mid-October, all the sources I looked at, Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, you name it, they were all saying nobody organized this. It was spontaneously generated. It was people who decided in flip-flops to walk 3,000 miles to the United States, pushing strollers and little babies around. I come back from Thanksgiving, and suddenly they're all tacitly saying, well, maybe it was organized in part by Pueblo Sin Fronteras and other groups on the ground there. So, yeah, even they tacitly admitted that the story's changed, and
but they very rarely tell their readers and viewers that this is, as you put it, a very well-organized, methodical operation. I have said the reason they are doing this is to break the U.S. asylum and immigration system. They want to break it so that anybody can come in here. That is the ultimate goal. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. I've looked into the background of Emma Lozano, who is a Methodist pastor who runs Pueblo and Centro Sin Fronteras. Emma Lozano got her start in activism in the late 80s with a group called CASA. It's an acronym. They no longer exist, but CASA was an open borders, Marxist-Leninist, communist organization that pushed for Mexican solidarity, open border stuff. She's since carried on that legacy through Centro Sin Fronteras and its affiliated groups.
Okay, so we know why they're doing it. We know how they're doing it, the organizations involved in funneling the money. We know that it's not working because President Trump's not going to allow them in. This is a core issue for him and his hopes for re-election. So I say it's over, pretty much over, unless there's violence, and I can't see them displaying that violence again because it just alienates more and more Americans when they see that violence coming from the migrants.
Well, it's just getting harder for the left to hold a unified front when none of the facts are on their side. I mean, just last week, there was an MS-13 gang member who was arrested, who was a Salvadoran immigrant traveling with the caravan. Well, I sure remember a month ago them saying, MS-13, no, they've got nothing to do with it. And I just saw a couple of days ago, there was a convicted criminal who had just 4 months ago been in a Honduran prison who was arrested by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agents at the border traveling with the caravan.
Yeah, but you expect that. At least I did. I don't think that the MS-13 is behind it or there's a massive amount of criminal intrusion here. I think there's some. I think the majority of people trying to get in here are young men. I think that's been proven by the little journalism that's been done. They've actually counted, and it's like 3-to-1 young men over women and children. But I don't see it as a criminal enterprise. I see it as a flagrant attempt by the far left to break our barriers down. It's not going to work. Last word.
Absolutely right. I mean, the bottom line is the lawlessness that these people are fleeing from is obviously regrettable. But I would tell anybody on the left who supports these caravans, it isn't a humanitarian thing to encourage people to make a dangerous, arduous trek north to the U.S. border. And if they succeed, they will only succeed in turning the U.S. into as lawless a country as the country these people are fleeing from.
Well, we just can't absorb millions of people from all over the world. Hayden, we really appreciate it. Thanks very much for helping us out.
Not often aired in public, but they do disagree with each other. If there's one issue that unites almost everybody on that side, though, it's immigration. And the principle they've united behind is that anybody from anywhere on the globe should be allowed to come into the United States, no questions asked. If you don't believe that, pay attention. For example, look at the theater surrounding the recent Migrant Caravan.
All of this for a group of people, a lot of whom are mothers and children, who pose no imminent threat.
The President of the United States has decided that a couple thousand scared, sick, people fleeing violence are a bigger threat to the United States than ISIS.
Guess what, Ben? It's in our laws that people are allowed to come to our borders and ask for asylum.
So this is a new thing. It seems like they've always had this view, but no. Many in the left used to be skeptical of mass immigration, partly for economic reasons, because it undermined the wages of workers. But there were others, many others, who had environmental concerns, too, about letting a lot more people into the country. Phil Cafaro is the author of How Many is Too Many? The Progressive Argument to Reducing Immigration into the United States, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Cafaro, thank you very much for coming on. Having you is the result of a long nationwide search to find someone with your views, because I remember so well as a kid that Democrats were really concerned, some were, liberals, about overpopulation and the effects on the natural environment, and I always kind of agreed with that. Tell me your concerns about mass immigration and its effect on the environment.
Well, Tucker, I'm not sure I'm the last liberal in the country who's concerned about immigration-driven population growth, but we are a minority among environmentalists. I'll give you that.
Yeah. So I see, like, the Sierra Club, which used to care about the Sierras. Huge fire breaks out in the Sierras last summer, started inadvertently by an illegal immigrant, or the degradation of marijuana farming in Northern California, which really does poison the soil. And they say literally nothing because their concern for open borders overrides their concern for the environment. What is that about?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. If you go back to the birth of the environmental movement 50, 60 years ago, there was so much concern and focus on population issues because people saw the connections between overuse of resources, between too much pollution, and the sheer numbers of people. And environmentalists used to talk about that. I think what happened between then and now is back then most of our population growth was coming from the number of children we were having, Native Americans. Whereas today, population growth in the U.S. is primarily driven by high levels of immigration. So people, for whatever reason, weren't as comfortable saying we needed to limit immigration as they were saying we need to limit how many kids we have. I think that's a mistake, though, because either way, you're driving population growth, and that has environmental consequences.
So quickly, and I wish we had more time for this because I think it's fascinating, and I would urge people to buy your book on this. What's the response you get from your fellow liberals when you say, wait a second, there are environmental effects of letting all these people in? What do they say to you?
Well, mostly what I get are people who, most people say, well, I didn't realize that. I hadn't thought about that. Because as you say, environmentalists have stopped talking about it. But the responses really run the gamut from, how long have you been a racist to, oh, thank you so much for talking about that. I've been thinking that myself, and I'm just not comfortable talking about it.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting thing to talk and write about because you do get such a wide range of responses.
Yeah, I mean, spend a week in a crowded, dirty country, and you'll find out you don't want to live in a place like that, I think. Phil Cafaro, thank you very much for your positions and for explaining them to us.
All right.
right. While migrant caravans are trying to cross the border in California, get this, there's a surge in migration in South Texas and in Arizona.
The Rio Grande Valley is ground zero for apprehensions, with the strain of the caravan stretching Border Patrol's resources and putting a strain on the agency as it continues with its mission. Agents there apprehending on average 680 people per day, compared to up to 145 arrests daily in San Diego.
Manuel Padilla Jr. is the director of Joint Task Force West in Texas, and he knows firsthand what the Border Patrol agents are up against. He joins us right now from San Antonio. Sir, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
You bet. We know you guys are and gals are really busy these days for a variety of reasons. But there's a story out this morning that apparently Border Patrol is preparing for perhaps a surge with some of these migrants who may try to do what happened a couple of weekends ago, where they try to race across the border. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I can tell you that we have an extremely difficult situation on the border, something that I have not seen in my 32 years of service with the U.S. Border Patrol. And what that situation is we have two very distinct problem sets. One is a traditional border security mission that includes MS-13, criminal aliens, narcotics trafficking, and the potential terrorist threat that comes at us, consistently. So that is a traditional border security mission. And then on top of that, now we have this humanitarian / asylum seeker mission. And that's really stretching the resources very, very thin. As you mentioned. But the interesting thing, or the difficulty in this, is that with the humanitarian mission, there is nothing that we can do at the field level. This requires congressional action to close the immigration loopholes. Sure. And also for the border security mission, of course, we need the infrastructure, the wall system to give the agents the tools that they need.
Is it frustrating when you're spending your life's work down there and you want laws to change and Congress isn't listening?
Well, it's not only frustrating, but it's border security. Border security is national security. So it's difficult to see that the agents are doing everything that they can. We're doing everything that we can with our partners, and it just requires congressional action to fill or to take care of these two problem sets.
Are the troops helping in McCallum? Does that help you guys? There seems the role of the military is expanding, it seems.
Absolutely. I say often that border security is a team sport. The troops coming down here, down to South Texas, I mean, we built up a lot of infrastructure, a lot of what we call impedance, laid some barriers to ensure that if the caravan came this way, we were ready to handle it. Yes.
Well, sir, thank you very much for your service, and thanks for telling us what's going on down south.
The proposal: thousands of migrants seeking asylum in the United States will have to stay in Mexico while their cases are processed in U.S. courts. Weijia Jiang has details.
CBS News has learned Mexico's incoming government has discussed plans with the Trump administration to have Mexico essentially serve as a waiting room for migrants seeking asylum in the U.S.
And we're not letting people in. It's called catch and detain. It's not called catch and release like it has been for many years.
President Trump has long criticized what he calls catch and release, current asylum rules that allow people seeking refuge to wait on American soil. According to the Washington Post, officials are still working out details of the proposed deal named Remain in Mexico, but some Mexican officials will likely fight the agreement. Just this week, the mayor of Tijuana declared we are in a humanitarian crisis as some 5,000 migrants, part of a caravan, arrived to his city.
They're going crazy to get them out. They want them out because things are happening. Bad things are happening in Tijuana. And again, it's not in this country because we've closed it up. The president has threatened to shut down the border if chaos unfolds when they reach the U.S. and has authorized troops to use lethal force to control the crowds. Mexico's new president will be sworn in on December 1st, and this asylum plan would be implemented under his leadership. The White House is not confirming or denying a deal is in the works, but said President Trump has developed a strong relationship with the incoming administration. Weijia Jiang, CBS News, West Palm Beach, Florida.
We're challenged by our faith to challenge injustice with courage. A church in Newberry is opening its doors to undocumented immigrants facing deportation. It is the first public sanctuary church in all of South Carolina. It's called the Clayton Memorial Unitarian Universalist Church. 7 News' Nikel Smith talked with people there to find out more on why they're doing this. Nikel.
Well, Tom, the church's board chairman says he knows they'll face challenges, but he says it doesn't compare to what undocumented immigrants experience when they're facing deportation.
A very friendly setting here.
A small sanctuary off SC 219 dating back to 1905. Clayton Memorial Unitarian Universalist Church in Newberry has been the church home for U.S. Army veteran Ricardo Castillo.
My parents are both from Mexico. I was born in the U.S. and I was raised here. Now I just volunteer with the American Red Cross.
A member with a heart for service, he says the church's new plan is service itself as a sanctuary for undocumented immigrants facing deportation, the first of its kind in South Carolina.
Back at the time we started discussing it, we were seeing pictures on television of children being ripped out of their mother's arms.
Board Chair Sam Stone says while a few carefully chosen people are being housed there, they'll work with lawyers to get their deportation orders overturned.
Internal policy that ICE has, it designates churches as sensitive locations where they don't ordinarily carry out their enforcement procedures.
Church leaders say they've gotten a lot of positive support so far. However, there are some people who have expressed concerns.
We would just ask them to give us a little space and time, just the common courtesy to try to respond to the call of our faith.
South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster has been an outspoken critic of sanctuary cities. The governor's spokesman said in a statement to WLTX that, quote, "Nobody has been a greater advocate for religious freedom than Governor McMaster, but equally as important is every citizen's responsibility to respect the rule of law. Thanks to Governor McMaster's leadership, there will never be a sanctuary city in South Carolina, and a few people in Newberry aren't going to change that." And the church said that this became official, Tom, when a lot of the congregants voted for this back in October.
Now, they've got to be expecting some challenges, some public backlash in some way. Are they hearing anything like that?
Right. They are already, Tom, and they said that was to be expected, but they feel it's going to be worth it because they feel the people they're helping are facing challenges themselves, too.
All right. We'll continue to keep an eye on this.
Tonight, the FBI is trying to figure out who's behind an attack on the American consulate in Guadalajara, hours before Mexico swore in its new president. Our border reporter Oscar Margain explains how a cartel could be sending a message with this attack.
In this border brief, a consulate attack. Federal police were seen guarding the U.S. consulate in Guadalajara Saturday, hours after it became the target of 2 grenade attacks late Friday night. The State Department said no one was injured and there was minimal damage to the building. The timing and the lack of casualties has led to speculations the attack was a message from a cartel to the new Mexican administration and the U.S. Recent focus on border security and the movement of migrant caravans without paid smugglers are believed to be hurting cartel profits, according to security experts. The FBI announced a reward of $20,000 for information leading to those responsible for the attack. The consulate closed Monday and resumed operations Tuesday. That's your border brief. I'm Oscar Margain reporting.
I did not.
Okay. One of our producers did. Hey, Michelle, years ago you wrote that book called Invasion, talking about the immigration problems here in the United States. There's a story out this morning. One of the people who was in the caravan has since been released into the United States. Apparently, a 19-year-old pregnant woman from Honduras by the name of Mary Uri Hernandez was arrested after she entered Imperial Beach, California. She apparently climbed over the border wall from Tijuana. As soon as she was down on the ground in American soil, she was arrested. And a couple of days later, apparently, she gave birth to an American citizen. And she said that her goal was to join her family in Columbus, Ohio, and giving birth on U.S. soil was a big reward for the long journey in the caravan. What do you say about that?
Well, that is the anchor baby problem, and President Trump has been right about this. He diagnosed automatic birthright citizenship as one of the biggest magnets and incentives to come here and break the law, and he's been asking Congress to do something about it. You can build 50-foot, 100-foot walls all along the 2,000 miles of the southern border, but if you don't turn off these magnets, it's going to result in a continued flow, and we're going to see these caravans over and over and over again. It is time to rethink automatic birthright citizenship. It's an anomaly around the world. There are only 30 nations that have it, and among advanced industrial nations, there are only 2, the U.S. and Canada. You know, for all of the open borders transnationalists who are always urging us to adopt the culture and practices of the rest of the world, this is one of the areas where they're clinging bitterly to, you know, a strange interpretation of the 14th Amendment. And look, my parents came here legally. My father was a neonatologist, and he was outraged because in his practice in Atlantic City, he saw women from around the world. It's not just women from South and Central America who are abusing this policy. It's people from Kenya or Russia or Korea who wait until they're 8.5 months pregnant to board a plane to get here. So it's not just something that affects the border. It's not just something that a wall will fix. And unfortunately, people in both parties don't want to address it.
Local aid groups helping asylum seekers released into San Diego on a daily basis say they're running out of funding and resources to continue helping.
As our 10 News reporter Laura Acevedo shows us, they are now having to turn people away.
Speaking at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in San Ysidro, the San Diego Rapid Response Network announced they are in dire need of help.
We will have hungry, sick, cold families and children in our streets if we do not act.
For the first time since October 26, the coalition had to turn away 20 people from their shelter Tuesday night.
The shelter was at capacity. We were no longer able to accept any families. We told the federal government, ICE, that we couldn't accept an additional bus.
The coalition of organizations has helped roughly 1,700 people since ICE ended their safe release policy, picking them up from transportation hubs, providing shelter, food, and medical services. The policy used to ensure asylum seekers had travel plans before their release. The shelter has moved 5 times in 6 weeks. So now the group wants a permanent shelter and for city, county, and state leaders to step in, meeting twice today with Mayor Faulkner's office looking for a solution.
We got a commitment from the mayor's office that he's going to be in a leadership role, working with us to figure this out together. So we're excited and we're hopeful.
These asylum seekers don't include any of the members of the caravan staying in the shelters south of the border. Volunteers say things will get significantly worse once those people start to get processed.
We will get swamped in a couple days if government doesn't take responsibility and act. I'm hoping that it's less conversation and more action.
In San Ysidro, Laura Acevedo, 10 News.
And we did reach out to the mayor's office. A spokesperson told 10 News they are looking at all options to address the organization's need.
And according to a new report, DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen may not be fired after all. Her newly observed toughness on illegal immigration and the caravans has reportedly impressed the president. We'll see. The FBI's corrupt chief of counterintelligence, retiring, Bill Priestap, helped oversee the Bureau's investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails and the supposed Trump-Russia collusion. He leaves his post by the end of this year. His departure, one of the last from the Obama era. Among those who have also left or fired, they include former FBI Director James Comey, his Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, both fired, agents Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, and General Counsel James Baker. Joining me now, Harmeet Dillon, the Dillon Law Group Managing Partner, a board member of the Republican National Lawyers Association, and RNC Committeewoman for California, Greg Jarrett, Fox legal analyst, also author of the New York Times bestseller, The Russia Hoax. Great to have you both here. And Harmeet, let me begin with you. Because you lived with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. What a test that is for reason, for law. How does your reaction to their ruling?
Well, Lou, I'm a passionate First Amendment lawyer, and I found this decision to be crazy because it wasn't even what the plaintiff who was appealing, the defendant who was appealing the case, asked for. These judges actually, after seeing the original briefs, reached out and asked them to brief this other issue, which nobody was asking about, which is this law so vague? And the law, by the way, is a law that says that it is a crime to encourage somebody to come into the country or stay in the country illegally. Pretty clear. Just like it's a crime to encourage somebody to break any other law. But the court said in this case, because they're sympathetic to people encouraging their relatives to stay illegally or lawyers encouraging their clients to stay illegally, that the law violated the First Amendment. I think this case is ripe for an appeal to the United States Supreme Court. Hopefully that decision will be reversed. It makes no sense.
And if that's the case, Greg, it'll just add to the high percentage of reversals of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. But at this juncture, they're not even adhering to common sense.
No, so they contort the law and the facts. You could make $1 billion betting against the Ninth Circuit. They get it wrong all the time. Classic example. This has nothing to do with the First Amendment and free speech. You know, it's bedrock law in America that if you provide substantial assistance in the commission of a crime, it's aiding and abetting. It's a violation of the specific statute. But the Ninth Circuit, you know, I don't know if they're smoking a lot of that legal marijuana out there, but, you know, they got it already.
We've long told you about activist judges undermining Trump's immigration policies, but this next story is outrageous. A district court judge in Massachusetts is accused of helping an illegal immigrant sneak out a back door to avoid being deported. Here's the backstory. Jose Medina Perez of the Dominican Republic was in court on drug charges and also faced a fugitive warrant for drunk driving. In a new audio recording obtained by the Boston Globe, his defense attorney is heard at the bench with the prosecutor and Judge Shelley Joseph. They raised doubt about whether Medina Perez had been correctly identified by ICE and whether he should be set free. Listen.
I don't think it's him. ICE is convinced that this guy, I went through the research, there's 13 young girls connected to the social. So something is bad. The client denies that it's him. I said, I watch it. But I think the best thing for us to do is clear the future issue and do something more personal.
If you need more time to figure this out, or if you till tomorrow, how's it going to get? What if we continue? Larry, can you go off the record for a moment?
Now, minutes after that recording, witnesses say the illegal was escorted out a back door and then released from custody. He then scaled a fence and escaped. We should note he has not been caught. Joining me now, Leo Terrell, a civil rights attorney, and Brian Kelly, a former federal prosecutor in Massachusetts. Brian, I want to start with you. How unique is it to have a federal investigation into a sitting state court judge on an issue such as this?
Well, it's not common at all, Laura. It's a bizarre set of facts, right? The defendant is arrested on drug charges. He's been deported twice before. And then because, for whatever reason, the judge turns off the tape recorder, contrary to court rules, we don't really know what she says next. Next thing you know, he's running out the back door onto the streets of Boston. So I think even by Massachusetts standards, this is a little bit too much judicial activism. And it's led to, according to the Boston Globe, a federal investigation, a grand jury investigation. And that in and of itself is quite unusual.
Well, he has since been caught. I want to make sure I get that right. So he's since been caught. But the underlying facts of this are really disturbing. Governor Charlie Baker spoke out about this. Leo, I want your reaction. Let's watch.
The facts of this case, as presented by the media, indicate a willful attempt to obstruct the work of a federal law enforcement official. And that's an inappropriate role for a judge.
Now, I guess Judge Shelley has not been on the bench very long, but nevertheless, Leo, would you say, Judge Joseph, would you say that this is warranted? Is this extrajudicial conduct? I mean, when you look up activist judge, this is really activist judge. It's not just a ruling. This is go.
Well, Laura, hi. Thanks for having me. And first of all, we're going after the judge. What about the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the officer who allowed him out to escape? I find this really odd because, as the governor said, based on the facts from the public, where's the investigation of the district attorney and the prosecutor? Wasn't there a conspiracy when they all got before the judge and said all these things? So I think my colleague who's on the show is ignoring the prosecutor who represents the state of Massachusetts and the defense attorney. Why single out the judge? Why? I'm confused. And one other point.
Does the judge not have control of his own courtroom?
Why?
Brian.
Well, I think people expect a judge to uphold the law, interpret the law, but not subvert the law. So I think the focus is on the judge right now because it's such a bizarre set of facts. And so that's why I think the judge is under investigation. We don't know what the grand jury will find. Apparently, according to the Boston Globe, they are investigating. They're hearing different witnesses. So who knows where it will lead? But this is not what taxpayers who paid her salary.
Are you on national TV? Are you on national TV saying that it was just the judge and nobody else? And you know as well as I do, being a federal prosecutor, that there got to be some evidence where the judge actively instructed someone, and you're just speculating right now.
Investigation.
And we don't, as attorneys,
no, wait a minute.
We're speculating.
Look, there's evidence on the record where she says ICE is going to get him, and then in violation violation of the court rules, she turns off the tape recorder. And she doesn't turn off the tape recorder because she's obeying the court rules. She knows she's doing something, it seems, that's not appropriate. And next thing you know, the defendant, an illegal alien, is running out the back door into the streets of Boston.
Well, he knew what he was getting here. He was getting literally getting a get out of deportation free card. Okay, that's what he was getting here.
Well, here.
If this defendant,
and Laura. What about? Why don't we just get the prosecutor on the Laura Ingraham show, the prosecutor and the defense attorney, and say, what did the judge say? We got direct evidence.
Leo, I love you, and if you want to be my booker, Andrew will not be happy about that. Okay, let me just say that. But we'll always take booking help, and I love that. But here's the problem: is in Massachusetts we have at least some of the counties are sanctuary counties. Boston itself is a sanctuary city, correct? So this is kind of in the DNA now of Boston, that you don't want to release people out the front door of the courtroom because ICE is going to, on occasion, we hope more than on occasion, be there to arrest them once they're released. And they know that. Well, that's why they go out the back door. Sneak out the back door.
I guess we now have sanctuary courtrooms.
Good point.
Well, let me just say this. Based on that, well, if you are having a sanctuary city, you have just stated that every official who endorsed a state-sponsored sanctuary city should be arrested for failing to cooperate with ICE. That's what you're basically saying.
That might go a little far, but not. Well, you're getting warm. You're getting warm, Leo. All right, great debate, you guys. Thanks so much.
Immigration gets tons of media coverage.
Tensions are rising at the U.S.-Mexico border.
A migrant caravan heading from Central America.
As the Department of Homeland Security warns, this problem will only get worse.
Tonight, far from the political firestorm in the U.S.
But the basic trends are often misunderstood or just a total mystery. For instance, what percentage of foreign-born people are living in the U.S. legally? The answer? 3/4, according to Pew Research. But you wouldn't know it by the headlines, right? So let's put the full immigration picture into perspective. About 10.7 million immigrants live in the United States illegally. Is that a big number? Small number? Is it troubling? Numerically speaking, here's some context based on Pew's estimates of the 2016 government data. 10.7 million is roughly the population of New York City, Phoenix, and Sacramento combined. The numbers dropped since a high in 2007 of 12.2 million. That's a drop of 1.5 million unauthorized immigrants, or if we stick with the comparison with cities, roughly the size of San Antonio. The decline is mainly due to a drop in Mexican citizens. As the American economy struggled, the economy back home improved. Meanwhile, there has been a 375,000 person increase in the number of Central Americans moving to the country illegally, primarily from the 3 Northern Triangle nations of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The estimated unauthorized population breaks down this way, according to Pew. Mexico, number 1, followed by Central America, then Asia, and then all the other regions, they're well below the 1 million mark at this point. But keep this in mind, the legal immigrant population in the United States is far larger. They're the other 75%. About 1 million people were granted lawful permanent resident status every year from 2007 to 2017, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Here's an index of other key facts about immigration. Apprehensions on the U.S.-Mexico border have teetered right around the 500,000 mark for quite a while. The number of babies born to immigrants in the country illegally, about 250,000 in 2016, down from 390,000 in 2007. And refugees allowed in, 33,000 in 2017. That's a significant drop from the 97,000 in 2016. Finally, what about crime, aside from initial border crossings? 4 studies found no significant link between unauthorized immigration and crime.